Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. When I go on there, I see like all 10 channels there are live. People are talking about just about everything. It's a place for the most heat, conversation, information, consternation, celebration. You can find all of it at Off the Floor. Link right there in the description. Bypass the Apple upcharge, $2.99 per month, and you can cancel at any time. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. Also, if you're listening to this prior to the NFL draft, they got an NFL draft contest. They're giving away a lot of free promo funds for lineups, so it's kind of a funny contest. Check it out. It's their draft contest there, but also you can play the NBA tonight, NHL, all the other sports are there, MLB. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down your $5. Get $50 to play right away. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yeah, 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. Impact we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Again, check out all the other coverage of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, including a live stream off the NFL draft tonight. How will the Dolphins screw this up? We'll try to be a little bit more optimistic than that. But that starts at 8 o'clock on the YouTube channel. Also, plenty of Panthers content on 5reasonsports.com. Their next game coming up on Saturday. I do not know why it is that the NHL and NBA continue to put Heat and Panther games on at exactly the same time, especially when they're in exactly the same region, if not the same city. But anyway, we're going to talk Heat today, as we always do. And Brady, I'm going to throw a poll out here for you after last night's game. I put this up this morning. The Heat, of course, lose to the Cavaliers, made a push late, a little closer than the last game. Not enough from the front court, just clearly. The starting front court, Wiggins, Bam, Ware did not provide what was needed. Jovic did off the bench until he made some mistakes late. Highsmith also played a ton of minutes, but primarily they were carried offensively for large portions of this game by the backcourt. Herro and Davion Mitchell did the bulk of the scoring in the starting lineup. And so I put this up here today, and there are a lot of factors that go into this. Obviously, it's not just a now thing, but are you sold on a Heat starting backcourt of Tyler Herro and Davion Mitchell for next season? So as we're speaking, 1,100 votes, 48% yes, 52% no. Honestly, I'm surprised the yeses were that high based on the negativity of Heat Twitter. So I'll ask you the same question. We don't know what they're going to do this offseason. Tyler Herro is obviously due a possible extension, but he doesn't have to get it this offseason and could still be on the roster next year. Davion Mitchell is a restricted free agent. The Heat have the right, as long as they give him a qualifying offer, which they plan to do, they have the right to match anything that's out there. So the likelihood is both of these guys will be back next year. How do you feel about a starting backcourt of Herro and Davion Mitchell next year?
So I think the reason why the voting is so split is because context is needed to really give your full answer on this question. So if you're talking about getting acquiring a player that we're going to probably be talking, different players we're going to talk about in the offseason, and maybe add to their front court and just on the wing, I think a lot of Heat fans, most Heat fans would say you're fine with a Tyler Herro, Davion Mitchell backcourt. I think when you look at it on the surface of all these years of what fits best next to Tyler, it's never been the Terry Roziers of the world. It's always been kind of the defensive playmaking type point guards, and Davion as kind of surpassed, I think, in both those areas of what we thought he was going to be. He's been a much better playmaker than I think he was projected to be. And he's honestly, which is crazy to say, been a better defender than I think we thought he'd be, because he's just been all over the place on that end of the floor. So it really complements Tyler well. But if you're talking about running back this same roster and you're talking about next season, this being the backcourt to compete in the Eastern Conference, I don't think you would be satisfied. I just think they're going to need more in that area if the rest of the roster is pretty similar. But if you can kind of acquire a player that takes you to the next level, that kind of the players that we've talked about in the past, honestly, a Jimmy type player, like the player that's kind of a number one, later in the season, that could, do his thing defensively, obviously 2 ways of the floor. Davion honestly does fit that style. I think he fits next to Tyler. He fits the style that they want to play. He's a big shot maker, which means you can close down the stretch on both sides of the floor. The things he's been able to do in the fourth quarters and overtimes these last few games, it's been really surprising. I was looking at some of the Bear offensive defensive rating numbers for Tyler Davion backcourt playing games, the 2 playing games. I know not a big sample, but 115 offensive rating and a 94 defensive rating in those 2 playing games, which they were both really good in those games. This regular season, they were 115 offensive rating, stayed the same, and a 109 defensive rating. So that obviously is, there's much more to, if you're talking about a 2-man combo in the backcourt and you're bringing up, defensive rating, there's so many factors that factor into that. The other, parts of those lineups and everything we could dig into deeper. But I did add Bam to that lineup, to that 2-man combo, just to see how much it would change. It actually didn't change at all. It's the exact same. I think it bumped up to a 116 offensive rating with Bam, with those 2, and it stayed at a 109 defensive rating. So it's interesting how they actually have been pretty consistent offensively, no matter the regular season play-in, playoffs, with Bam, without Bam. That grouping has been around the same level offensively, which just kind of shows the way that they're leaning with this team. It's Davion playmaking, but it's a lot on Tyler's plate. It's a lot of Tyler, just searching for a shot offensively. Davion's making a lot of his spot up threes. But it's shown, the point is that it's shown it can be good enough offensively if you have the right, number one option around them.
So here's where I come down on this, or have come down on this. I've typically said if they're going to have Tyler as a starting 2, they need to get a backcourt mate who is basically taller than him. That's been my thing, or longer, okay, in that regard. And so I wouldn't have chosen, other than the fact that he's an elite defender, I wouldn't have chosen Davion Mitchell for his backcourt mate. In fact, when we were having these conversations about players who might fit next to Tyler before the Heat ever made the Jimmy trade, I said, well, if you could get a guy like Andrew Wiggins to play in the backcourt with Tyler, that would be a perfect fit. You've got length. He's not a bad shooter, even though he's inconsistent, and he can defend. Now we see Wiggins here, and he's playing basically the 3. I know we're not supposed to say positions anymore, but he's basically playing the 3, and that's been kind of an up and down experience, which is worthy of another pod, actually, where we get into Andrew a little bit more specifically. Davion has been the most consistent player that they've acquired. I mean, for Jimmy, I don't think there's any question about that. Obviously, Wiggins, former number 1 overall pick, although Davion was a lottery pick too. Wiggins would seem to have the higher upside. He's won a championship and all that, but Davion has actually made a more consistent impact than Wiggins has. So I've come around on it a little bit as far as maybe you don't need someone necessarily who is 6'5", 6'6", that type of player. I mean, a Mikal Bridges type player, of course, not one you trade 5 first-round picks for, but that was the kind of player I was saying, okay, you need that kind of player next to Tyler. I think Davion's playmaking has been the biggest surprise to me. There was a stat today that was put out there about he's actually had the most success off drives off anybody in the playoffs in terms of the metrics and what's been created off of that. That's not something that I was expecting. He's able to shield his body when he goes to the rim and finish, which is something that, again, I don't want to pile on the guy that he replaced, but that was something that the guy they traded a first-round pick for was not capable of doing. I'm not against it. I was very much against the Herro-Rozier backcourt. I unearthed a quote from Spo from way early in the season where he said, I don't know why you think guys think this can't work. I think we now know why it can't work. So I'm not against it. Obviously, Davion's defensive ability, even if you had a Rozier who was the Rozier he used to be, is far above what Rozier is. But I guess where Heat fans are, and I think that's why you're getting the 52% against, even though it's not as high a number as I expected, is that I think in a perfect world, they'd like to see Davion be the third guard, right? Like the energy changer off the bench who could basically play with either guard who's in the starting lineup. I think that's an ideal situation. I just don't know that they're going to find the guy to start next to Tyler as they're currently built. And my other concern, and I'll hand this one off to you, is we've kind of talked about these as groupings, right? And it's very similar to what Cleveland was dealing with at one point. It was like, okay, you've got Mitchell and Garland, and once Mitchell decided to commit to stay, like Garland's people, he's clutch, okay? Garland's people were like, we got to get him out of here. That was the report that was coming out of here because that's not going to work. The Mitchell-Garland dynamic was not going to work. And the same has been said of Allen and Mobley. And I feel like we're having these conversations now about where and Bam, what kind of team do you build around them if you're a front court? And Mitchell and Herro, and I'm talking about Davion, not Donovan. Davion and Herro, what kind of team you build around them if they're the starting backcourt? And that actually makes the small forward in that context really important, okay? And what you've seen with Cleveland is that they've used Strus in that role, more of a shooter, with some physicality, as we obviously know. But they've also went out and got Hunter. They've got Okoro, and they kind of rotate these three guys, and then they do three guards with Jerome sometimes. It's a lot to say. But I'll before we get to that and how they kind of unlock this with the other piece, which is what it seems like Cleveland has been able to do, and that's why they paid so much for Max. Do you think that is it a failure in a sense if they end up with Herro and Davion starting next year because they haven't gotten the piece to play with Tyler that would allow Davion to play what is probably his ideal role, which would be third guard?
It's tough because I do agree. Davion, best case scenario, he is your sixth man that comes in as the energizer, can kind of sub into that spot. You compare, Miami's roster to Cleveland because of the positions and everything, but the one difference is Cleveland has the ability to put their shooter at the three because Garland, the other piece, is a really high-level offensive player, whereas Davion's kind of like the defensive complement that we're talking about, playmaking. So, like, Davion doesn't match the level of Garland offensively, obviously, so they're allowed to put a shooter in there, whereas Miami needs their third, their number three, in between the two guards and the two bigs to be a high-level offensive player with peaks, with ability to kind of score at all three levels. Like, that's what they need in there to kind of take the pressure off Tyler. That's why there was this such an expectation for Andrew Wiggins and why things looked so good when he was playing at a high level. So I think when you look at like what they need at that position, it's literally probably Wiggins on his best day. It's like what Andrew Wiggins was at some of his peaks of this season with Miami. Like, that's kind of ideally what you want in that spot. But I will be honest, I'd like, as much as we say Davion probably will be best in that six-man position moving forward, to your point, like, are they really going to get a guy that's going to be better than Davion this offseason that we're going to be saying, like, this guy needs to start over him just to put Davion in a spot? Because even if they do force it because they want Davion to play that role, it's going to be exactly like this season. Eventually, they're going to loop back around to it, and Davion's going to be starting because they're like, okay, we have to start the guy that's the better player, that's more impactful, that probably fits better right now, even though it's not probably best for the roster construction in general. So it's going to be tough. Like, they have to figure out how to build this roster. We'll see what they do in the draft. Like, maybe they, get one of these guards that we're speculating or talking about coming up. And things may look different as they continue to lean in this youth direction. But the three spot is the interesting part to me. I mean, not that they're like, one couple bad games you're moving on from Wiggins, but like, he's the difference maker in this lineup. He's what moves your ceiling here, as a team, as a lineup, as a unit in this postseason. Like, he's what can move the needle a little bit. Yes, you need more from Bam. Yes, you probably need more defensively in a lot of areas, but like, ultimately that's the difference maker. If you don't give Tyler help, if Davion is giving him help on the ball, as we said, as a playmaker, as setting things up, bringing the ball down the floor, he's a great attacker. But like, putting up pressure on the defense type attacker offensively, they're missing that next to Tyler. So as I think that to the overall point, it's like, this backcourt could work if the right pieces in between the two categories you're talking about.
Which is kind of what we said about the front court. I mean, it's sort of what we talked about with Bam and Ware, and we're like, okay, if you get the right pieces around him, you're building differently than you did before. What's funny about all this is that the guy we saw last night play after 2 months and have these peaks, but also the valleys at the end of the game, and then he took accountability for it, which is one of the things I appreciate about Jovic. he could unlock some of this stuff, it feels like, with his skill set. But I don't see a world. I mean, obviously, if Wiggins is here, it's not going to happen. But I don't really see a world where Spoelstra goes to a Bam where Jovic front court next year. I don't see that. Although you can make a case for it in terms of the playmaking that would exist, right?
And if they do, though, I think if they were to go to Nico, Bam, where they wouldn't go to Davion and Tyler, honestly.
Right.
Like
Right.
if you're getting the playmaking from your three in Jovic and kind of getting that valve, I think they have more versatility to go to different guys next to Tyler in the backcourt. So like that's the only way they could, if they find a piece to go around those four, and then they could bring Davion and Haywood off the bench. Like that's a core way of going about it. But if they don't, they're kind of in a place where they're forced to play Davion and Tyler. Not that it's the worst thing in the world, but like we're saying, there are just certain limitations with the rest of the lineup.
Well, what about this? Okay, and this gets away from having a point guard, so to speak, but then you've got Jovic's playmaking in the starting lineup. What if they did what I suggested way before they got Wiggins, which is, you could put Wiggins, a player like Wiggins next to Tyler in the backcourt. I mean, this would be the biggest team that they have had probably since the Riley days as a coach. I mean, if you were to go with Ware, Bam, Jovic, Wiggins, Herro.
I mean, it's great on paper.
Yeah.
I mean, like if the shooting, I just don't know if it's all the way going to be there, because you'll see what Nico develops in the offseason with the spot of shot becoming a little bit more consistent. Mm-hmm. Bam and Ware, obviously that limits it as well. But like it keeps falling back on like you needing that aggression from Wiggins, you needing him to put up a bunch of shots from the perimeter, you needing him to kind of be that guy next to Tyler to take the pressure off. It's funny because whenever we go in circles about lineups, it's like we go to one lineup and they're like one defender short, but then they go to the other lineup and they're one shooter short.
Shooter short, right.
So it's like they're in this weird spot where they're in this in-between area where they just need a couple tweeners that are high-level players so they could like be able to mix things up a little bit.
Well, and Boston and Cleveland don't seem to be anything short when they go to their lineups. And that's really, if that's what you're looking at, you're saying you don't have situations where Boston and Cleveland, and I'm just talking about the East now, not to get to the West, but or even New York to a certain degree, although I felt they threw too many wings together in that mix to begin with, and that's why I have questions about it. Towns' defense also. But when you look at Boston and Cleveland, you're like, okay, put this lineup out there, it can defend, and it can score. Put this lineup out there, it can defend, and it can score. With the Heat, there's always been these choices that you've had to make over recent years. Now you can put more high-level defenders on the floor at the same time, but then you're basically asking Tyler to carry offensively. And then those defenders also have to cover for Tyler defensively. And that's why you're a mediocre team. Because if you can't find advantages with numerous lineups, then you're going to end up back at 500 or something along those lines. All right, on the other side of this, we'll talk about what each of these guys could do to improve their games in the offseason to maybe make it work a little better. And then I'm trying to hold the Wiggins stuff for another pod because I'm starting to develop some feelings about what they should do there, which are not exactly the same as I felt when they acquired him in a trade. The inconsistency has kind of gotten to me a little bit, and I think they should explore something this offseason. But we'll talk about that on another podcast. Before we do, want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, All Pro Construction Builders. You can find them at All Pro Construction Builders on Instagram or allproconstructionbuilders.com. They say quality is their specialty. What do? They protect your home or business from the elements of South Florida. We know the hurricane season always around the corner down here. They're based in Dade County, but they service Monroe County and Broward County as well. Reach out to Danny and his team, 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. It's All Pro Construction Builders and allproconstructionbuilders.com. Not only will you get the free estimate, but you also get 5.5% off your entire order if you mention 5 on the floor, 5 Reasons Sports, or 305 Guys. That's the show that I do with Alex Dono twice a week on the YouTube channel on All South Florida Sports. So check it out. It's All Pro Construction Builders or allproconstructionbuilders.com, 305-484-4429. All right, let me ask you this, because improvement is not a straight line, and we've seen Tyler improve. Defensively, another question we'll talk about. We've seen him make gains in terms of his mentality, in terms of obviously, his ability to play through 3 levels, gets the line a little bit more, the 3-point shooting, the different in the shot diet that he had this year. And Davion, I mean, there's no question he's improved. I mean, I saw him in Sacramento his first year, and like he literally looked like a lost offensive player, and this was a lottery pick, and that was kind of the knock against him when he came out. He looks like a capable offensive player. I mean, he does. I mean, he's not elite, but again, he gets in the paint. He does more getting in the paint than Kyle Lowry did his last couple of years in Miami, and he finishes better than Terry Rozier did, and he makes better decisions than Terry Rozier makes. So, like, all of that stuff. If you didn't know what the Heat gave up for these particular players, you'd be like, okay, that's the guy they paid the first round pick for. Let me ask you, if I was to say to you, how close is Tyler to his ceiling, and how close is Davion to his ceiling? Which player do you feel is closer?
It's definitely Davion. I mean, obviously, the better player usually has the higher ceiling in general because they have more to get to. Not to put limitations on Davion, but I think this is pretty much what he's going to be in this league. He's going to be an absolute disruptor on defense. He's going to be a positive playmaker. The jumps he's made as a shooter has been huge. I mean, he definitely still has upside there. It's never really been a problem with his form. It's never really been a problem like with any mechanics. But right now, it's just like when you put better players around him and there's more pressure and more attention on Tyler and Bam and these other guys, so they're just fully helping off them. He's just getting great looks and he's just knocking them down. He's just a tough player to deal with. And as you said earlier, I think that the driving, the attacking, the physicality, the finishing specifically has probably been more surprising to me than the playmaking, honestly. He's been such a great finisher. So he's been able to kind of really figure things out at all levels. If he can kind of figure out like a little floater in the in-between area, I think that would probably help him out a little bit to give him some, just differentiate a little bit offensively. But Davion's definitely closer to his ceiling. Tyler still has other things to get to, even though he's, maxing out in a lot of his different offensive areas. Tyler's shown he's improved year over year. The stuff he's done this year, as much as we're kind of looking at everything under a microscope for Tyler this season, the season he had in the regular season, the All-Star year, the improvements he's made off the dribble, willing to walk into a role that he's not really, used to doing, just kind of spotting up early in the year, turning that into now where he's doing isolation stuff that was never really a part of his bag, finding ways to create. It's so tough because when we were talking before about like how this could work long term or different things about them working together, it's like you can't really know until you get those other pieces that we keep falling back on, because I just feel like the attention that's on Tyler right now, like this shouldn't be his role in the backcourt. Like it shouldn't be him seeing 2 to 3 defenders every single time down the floor because they don't really respect the other guys on the floor. If you had that other guy and you made things easier, I think the Tyler Davion backcourt would look even better. Like I really do. I think they have more opportunities if they could free Tyler up and not see as much pressure on him. So we'll see if we ever get to see that, because I don't really know how that'll ever, open up. I think, obviously we'll get to the front court, I think, in a future episode as well, but their versatility and them becoming, Bam being consistently more aggressive here, down the stretch of this season. Obviously we're coming off a game where, we have a little recency bias with the, not being aggressive, but Kel'el Ware as well. I think there's more there as well to kind of let him off the leash, to let him be more of a productive offensive player. And if they could, release some of these limitations of so many players in the lineup, I think it helps the backcourt even more. So when you don't have elite top tier talent in your backcourt, like some of these other teams in the NBA, you cannot have limitations in your other positions. Like you have to have versatility at those other positions to help those guys out. So that's what they're going to need moving forward.
And that's why I'm wondering about some of the other players on the roster here, because it almost feels like they've got to decide what they're committing to in the starting lineup. Are they committing to Bam and Ware together? Are they committing to Davion and Tyler together? And then you mentioned the Wiggins X factor, but then it also raises the question of how some of these other guys fit. Like I mentioned Jovic, but like, what is Jaquez's role ultimately in a lineup where you have Mitchell and Herro, where again, Mitchell is sort of a limited offensive player, better than we expected. Ware right now is a limited offensive player. So plugging Jaquez into that lineup, unless he, even for small stretches, if he doesn't make great improvement this offseason, I don't know what the role for him would be. It's almost like it's only a bench group with others. Haywood is like, Spoelstra's like break glass an emergency player, like, right? Case of emergency, right? Like you plug him in and not really care about the fit because he's having a night like he had last night from 3, and he's just better out there than Wiggins was. So it's like, okay, we'll go to Haywood here. I mentioned Jovic, but some of these other guys, like it is like Duncan. Like I don't know, like it feels to me like we're seeing the last days of Duncan Robinson in the Heat uniform. It does, because he just has not been able to get it going consistently this year like he did last season. And I know he dealt with injury again this year, that was a little bit different, but it's like one good game compared to 3 invisible games of late. And then we saw him play only 11 minutes in the last game. So it does feel like the roster, if they're going to go with this backcourt and this front court, that the rest of the roster is going to need a refresh too. It feels like that, because it doesn't feel like all these pieces fit. And this thing was put together on the fly, so you got to give them a little bit of grace for that. But they're going to need more than Wiggins is providing at the 3 to make it work. I think with it, and maybe he can get there after an off season. And obviously he's the number 1 overall pick. There's ability there, but to make the front court work, which is, a little clunky, the wham thing, the Bam wear thing, and then Mitchell and Herro, again, you're back to a backcourt without size. And even if one of them is a bulldog defender, you're still in a backcourt without size. And you look at the way the teams have trended around the NBA, with the exception of a couple, that's not the direction that they're going. I mean, look at the way that OKC plays. Shea, obviously with his length, Dort in there as an elite defender. I mean, just go around the NBA. It's you got a 6'4" and a 6 foot. 6'4" does not have, as we've talked about, long arms. 6 foot player plays bigger than he is, but again, they're small. And then you're like, okay, well, we're going to counter that by going big with the 2 players in the front court. But you've got Ware, who I don't want shooting a 3 for probably the next 2 years, even though they talk about his spacing, and Bam, who we see can go through these fits of inconsistency or sort of lack of aggression on offense. I guess I'm not sounding real positive about it, but I don't think the starting lineup we saw yesterday, like I like a lot of the pieces individually in it. I don't know that that's a starting lineup that's going to work long term.
Well, if they want to contend, I mean, it can work,
right.
Work enough to be sustainable in 500 and be a playing team. But if you're trying to contend in this Eastern Conference, it's not going to be good enough. Like, I just think when you talk about them needing a refresh, like last night I'm watching them lean defense, and that's fine. Like I think that's probably necessary. I think that's probably the move right now in this series. But it's been too long where we're talking about this team just not having enough offensive pieces, not being able to score for long stretches. Like eventually here, they're going to have something where you're eventually going to have to start scoring against some of these teams. I'm watching the way Cleveland's shooting the basketball from 3. I'm watching the way Boston can put up points. There's just all these top teams are able to score at will. And it just feels like Miami can have short stretches where they shoot above their head, or Tyler's just, going unconscious. But other than that, they just cannot keep up with high level scoring. So that's part of this with the lineup, because if you're getting, let's say, 30 points from Bam and Ware on a nightly basis, like, is that enough? And if let's say you're getting Davion, Bam, Ware, you're getting around 40 points a game from, in that lineup. I just don't know if that's enough scoring to go around. Like, it just feels like on too many nights, like those positions are being filled with high level scorers in this league right now, that you're going to have to hit a decent, another level offensively to really compete. So that defense, if they could put in a defensive structure around Bam and Ware and Davion and all these pieces, but they need some scores to put in the mix around Tyler. Like that's kind of my focus going into the offseason. My big thing to look at is like they have to take this offense to another level.
Well, for those who are sitting there, and I know we've had a debate about how much to pay Tyler, whether to give him the full $50 million a year. And I think I made my feelings clear on this. I think you make him an offer, but I don't think you go to 50. I think somewhere in the 35 to 40 range is appropriate, even though we know that the numbers are going to be going up because of the TV deals and everything else. But when I look at it, I'm like, okay, for those who want just Tyler gone, I'm like, okay, and then who's scoring? Who's scoring on this team? Like, are they going to get to 85? Because I watch stretches of the game, and I'm like, if Tyler doesn't take over, there's nobody else who's doing anything, like offensively. There's no ability for anybody to just get their own, and that's that they have to find more bucket getters. They just do, because there are just too many teams around the league where they have a guy and they're like, okay, just go get it. They know that this is not news to them. But Tyler has filled into the role because he's the guy who's had to take it. It's not necessarily because this was by design. And so that's the project going forward.
They did though. The flip side of that, they did just try and go get a bucket getter, Ethan, and it didn't work out. So like that's the other part of this. Like,
well, don't get one from Charlotte, okay?
Yeah.
Like, don't let's avoid all bucket getters from Charlotte and Washington. And again, easier said than done because if you've got a bucket getter on a good team, the likelihood is that good team's probably going to lock that player up. But you got a bucket getter on a bad team that's just basically filling numbers because somebody has to. I get it. I don't think that Tyler is that, by the way. For those who say, well, that's what Tyler is in the Heat. No. Rozier on Charlotte and Tyler in the Heat are not the same thing. Okay. You obviously we've seen Tyler as a higher level player than Terry Rozier is, but I'm just saying like you got to be careful on where you go get that player and whether or not that player is going to be able to play in structure, but also play out of structure in a positive way, not taking three step back threes on the same possession and then not able to finish on the next one. But anyway, we don't need to belabor it. All right, Brady, appreciate it. We'll see where this thing goes. But more episodes going forward. I think Greg and I are doing that, taking a look at where the Heat are in terms of assets, cap, and all of that compared to other playoff teams in the Eastern Conference to see if things are really as bad as Heat fans think they are, or maybe they're a little bit better positioned than we're giving them credit for. So we're going to go through it in a detailed way over the next couple of days. Brady, myself, and Alex will all be at the game on Saturday. So Saturday, 1:00, catch that. And I think Greg will be hosting a live show probably with others from our crew over at 5 Reasons Sports. And it'll be here on the 5 on the Floor feed. Have a good one, everybody.